So what I wanted to do there in those last 4 videos was to get deep into a problem in a text and see how we can reconcile it. And you've seen that you have to do a lot of research, a lot of thinking to be able to sometimes understand what's going on in some gospel narrative that seems to be contradictory. And I hope that has encouraged you to go deeper. But for 2 videos, I just want to tell you what I got out of Poythress's book. I found it very refreshing from this scholar, because he's very creative in the sense that he uses really good ideas about how to study language, how to study ancient texts that help you really to resolve some of the contradictions within the Gospels, or seemingly contradictions in the Gospels. So some of his techniques that he uses are really, really helpful and liberating. Secondly, what I like about his book is he interacts with ancient literature. He interacts with the ancient church, such as Augustine and Calvin and other scholars like that of ancient times. And I really like that. And what is quite remarkable is sometimes he'll quote in the book Saint Augustine, or he'll quote Calvin, and they're as relevant today in hermeneutical understanding of the Gospels than they were when they were first written. And so I find that really interesting and encouraging. There is quite a bit of epistemology in the book, in the first half of the book, where he talks about presuppositions and the need to, which I elaborated a little bit, and the need to be very careful in trying to say, when you're talking to people about these contradictions, that there's neutral ground. You know, the idea that the person can come up to you and say, oh, we're neutral, we can investigate the Gospels, etc. And I think he is right. People can ask questions, but we need to call them out, that they're not neutral, that they don't have an objective stance to the Gospels. And so epistemology and theory of knowledge and comes out a little bit in this, and I really like that. He's applying presuppositional apologetics in his biblical exposition of the Gospels and these issues with contradiction, and I thought that was really good. The other thing I like is his intellectual honesty. He often says that sometimes we don't know the answer. Sometimes we have to struggle, and he talks about the intellectual being crucified, that sometimes we want to be intellectual, we want to have all the answers, but sometimes we have to be crucified. We have to walk in a humble way. And he said often a lot of PhD students won't do that, but that's what we've got to do. We've got to be crucified with Christ. Sometimes God gives us contradictions or difficulties in the Bible to crucify our pride, to show us that we're not as clever as we think we are. But he also gives these difficulties as well to blind people, because some people are so proud and so arrogant that when they come to these contradictions and they say, oh, there's nothing in the Bible, it's more condemnation on them. And I like this nuanced approach about dealing with these issues about intellectual pride and pride in being a skeptic and whatever. And the other issue that I like is when he calls orthodox people out, people who say that they've got all the answers, and he's saying, you know, that's not fair, because some people do have genuine intellectual difficulties, and for you to just dismiss them and say they're not important is not fair, and they're going to be discouraged by you doing that. I'm going to finish with one more video now about doubt and the gospel.